do it.
I'm just saying. If you got it, that's all that matters. Let's play the view. Alfonso. Yeah, all the view to order.
Classes, I would tell you what we were going to do first. Actually, this meeting's for one purpose, to discuss the violent crime and possibly other crime. I'm not sure where the police chief is going. But I would like to turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Ken Larking. But before I do, let me ask each council member that we do no questions or comments until the presentation is complete. And so if you have questions, just write them, jot them down, and we'll come back to it. So we want uninterrupted time for this presentation. Ken.
All right, mayors, members of the council, thank you very much for this opportunity to come speak to you. I'm going to give a little bit of background as to the reason why we're here. As everyone knows on council, on October 23rd and 24th of this year, we had a retreat. And during much of the retreat, city council focused on what could be done to reduce violent crime in the city. And that was one of three focus areas that the city council decided to put as their priorities for the upcoming year and beyond. The other two include strengthening our relationship with the school board, and the other is to grow Danville. I will point out that all three of these areas do have an impact on each other. So if we can have a very strong relationship with our school board and have strong school system for our students, then that could lead to a reduction in violent crime as well. Also, if we're growing Danville, and what we mean by that is by increasing business opportunities for people who are trying to do business in Danville, increasing, making our community a better place for people to visit and live. All those things can lead to a reduction in crime. So, but this first area that we're discussing today, at this time will be on the first focus area, which is to implement long and short-term strategies to reduce violent crime. And the plan for tonight is for the chief to provide some background information on the issues that we're dealing with right now. For the benefit of the media and those in the public that are here present, we thought it would be a good idea for them to hear the background. We know that City Council is very well aware of these things. It'll be a little bit of a repeat, but some of it will be new information for you as well. So we hope that'll be helpful. After that, the chief will discuss the police focused efforts that we are proposing to help achieve the goal that you set for reducing violent crime. And then I will follow up with some other areas that the city plans to cover in order to reduce violent crime. And those are more long-term, although some of the things that the police chief are going to be talking about are long-term as well. There'll be short and long-term solutions. Very briefly, I'm going to describe the process. After the retreat, the process that I used to develop these along with staff. After the retreat, I had several meetings with city staff, department directors, and others to talk about the focus areas that the city council had developed. We had many meetings, many email conversations, many revisions, many more revisions after that, and we came up with what we believe is a good start for this working draft. And I want to thank our city staff for all the time that they put to looking at the focus areas and coming up with some ideas that we can implement that would have some immediate and long-term impact on violent crime. Also want to thank City Council. I want to commend them for not only focusing on the short-term solutions for this issue, but to recognize that there are some long-term issues that need to be dealt with in order to keep us from getting to the point where we're dealing with violent crime. And really, that's the more humane approach in a lot of ways, is to try to help our youth and our children to keep them from getting to the point where they're involved in these kinds of activities. And the City Council deserves a lot of credit. because a lot of times the public wants to see something immediate and they want to see some action right away. But if we're going to truly transform the community, we need to focus on the immediate and the long-term issues. So thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Broadfoot to discuss our current circumstance and some of the ideas that he has for dealing with it. No, now it is.
Good evening, and want to take this opportunity to first thank City Council for the support that you have given the Danville Police Department over the years. It has been strong, it has been welcomed, and but we are as alarmed as you are with this recent turn of events in Danville that has been manifested in the number of murders that have occurred. And it's a record number. But what I thought I'd do tonight is to give you a little background for where we are and how we got to where we are, what we're doing, and how that impacts where we can go in the future. Our stats for 2016 are not complete, so we can't really put them up here yet. But to look at our history of violent crime, we can go back to last year, 2015, and we had a total of 294 violent crimes. These are the crimes that are required to be reported to the state police on the crime reporting system. We had 6 murders, 85 robberies, 12 abductions, 147 aggravated assaults, and 44 forcible sex offenses, which was a total of 294. And we estimate that approximately 200 out of the 294 violent crimes were between people that knew each other. An aggravated assault takes place between neighbors. An aggravated assault takes place between family members. A murder, most of the murders, if not all of them, take place between people who knew each other. A lot of the robberies, as you know from the weekly report, not a lot of the robberies, but a good number of them are between people who know each other, and that creates an atmosphere for violent crime. We're second amongst Virginia cities in 2015 in our crime rate. And the crime rate is not only violent crime, but all of our crime. And we're second among the Virginia cities. But here's the interesting fact. If no violent crime had occurred in Danville, none of those 294 violent crimes, we'd still be in second place. Violent crime is not what drives our ranking in the state. What drives our ranking is in that last bullet on this slide, are the 5 categories up there of 1,400 simple assaults, 1,300 larcenies, 815 vandalism, 684 drug and narcotic offenses, and 320 burglaries. They comprised over 91% of our total crime of 5,220, and that's what really drives our ranking. What also drives our ranking, if we are successful in our drug and narcotic arrests, like we say, 684 for 2015, the more successful we are in drug arrests, it also affects us in our crime rate because that's counted as an offense in the total. But when you look at the 294 violent crimes, they were 5.8% of our total crimes. We had a total number of crimes for 2015 of 5,020. 294 of them were violent crimes. So when you look in comparison with Danville with some other cities around the state, you can see what those comparisons are as far as what the percentage of their total crime, how much of it was violent crime. And Danville is right in here, in between Charlottesville and Martinsville, with a 5.8% of total crime being violent crime, we'd be right in here, in between these two. But what is driving the concern, of course, is murder. And so far this year, we've had 14 murders, which is a record. We average almost 5 per year. In a document that was sent out last week to council, we listed all of our murders that we had recorded since 1953. And the average for the years that we did have records for, it averages almost 5 per year. But murder is the most visible perception of crime, even though it's the lowest percentage of total crime. It's a very low percentage, but it's what, of course, people are very, very worried about when the murder rate goes up. We've had 14 to date, which is a record high, which is strange, really, when you look at it, because we had record 25-year lows of only 3 murders 2 years ago and 4 years ago. In 2012 and 2014, we had record lows. And then in 2016, we have a record high of 14. So when we go from a record low to a record high in the course of just 2 years, the question has to be asked is why? Well, murders always occur in cycles. When you look at our murder chart from 1953 on, you can see that they do come in cycles. There's low points, and then there's a peak, and then it levels out, and there's a peak. As we've come into the 1990s and 2000, the cycles are shortening. You're having peaks and valleys at a greater rate. What we do believe is that these cycles are generational. Sometimes you have a generation that is more prone to violent crime, to murder, and sometimes you have a cohort of folks who went through school together, are friends together, and they end up becoming involved in crime that leads to murder. So the cycles are usually driven by that. And the cycle that we're in now that is causing the high number and the record number of murders is really because of younger offenders with gang affiliations using social media and easy access to firearms. When you get that combination of those 4 things, it creates almost a perfect storm for a high murder rate. So when we look at the homicides that we have had so far this year, 14 of them, all of them were by gunshot wound. And the major relevant factor in each of these homicides, sometimes it's hard to figure out. It could be a gang member who is involved in a drug deal with a person, and a third party came up who he has an argument with in a dispute, and a murder occurs. So is it a gang-related murder? Is it a drug-related murder? Or is it an argument-related murder? So it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out what the major relevant factor is in our murders. But the best that we can do is we believe that in 5 of our murders, they were gang-related. 4 of them were arguments between people over various things, whether it doing the dishes or a dice game, something like that, domestics, other criminal activity. They were involved in maybe selling stolen property, and that led to a gun being pulled and a murder occurring. And then we had 1 robbery that ended up in a murder. So those are our 14 murders that we've had this year. Other relevant factors that impact the murder rate are, of course, what everyone is concerned with. It's what we have listed there, and that's a partial list: the parenting, poverty, housing, education, and employment. That all contributes to those to that mindset of murder. But the new trends that we're going through right now in 2016 is the gang factor. What we're finding that the age range of most of these gang members is approximately 14 to 25. There's one or two younger than that and a few older than that, but the majority of them are in that age range. What we're also finding is that the access of these gang members to firearms is just alarming. Since January 1st of this year, we've had a total of 89 firearms stolen in the city of Danville. 42 of them were from unlocked vehicles. That can easily be prevented. And we don't know how many have been purchased with straw purchases, which is a gang member who knows somebody who is legally able to purchase a firearm, gives them the money, they go in and purchase the firearm, and then turn that firearm over to the gang member. Knowing the number of straw purchases is kind of hard. But murder by firearm is becoming a statewide problem, and it's also becoming a national problem. And this is from 3 days ago in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Richmond's experiencing a 40% increase in their murders from last year. And Leonard Berry, the Richmond Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney, he was quoted in the paper as saying, in the last year, there doesn't seem to be any way we can get people to stop getting and using guns anymore. It's, like I said, it's almost a perfect storm of the access to guns. It's a lack of responsible gun ownership. When 42 weapons are stolen out of unlocked vehicles, that's a serious problem. Our preliminary statistics for 2016, we were looking at, of course, the number of murders for 2016, but when you look at our overall crime for 2016, preliminary statistics, we won't know until March when we reconcile everything with the state police, but our total violent crime numbers will likely increase. Number one, because of the murders. We had 6 last year, and we've had 14 so far this year. Our aggravated assaults are going to increase, and the reason why is that with these gang murders, we've had a number of retaliation shootings into homes, drive-by shootings. And if somebody shoots one bullet into a house and there's 5 people in the house, that's considered 5 aggravated assaults. So when you have these retaliation shootings into the homes, it drives up the aggravated assault rate. So we're going to increase for 2016 in the number of violent crimes. But overall crime is likely to decrease by, we estimate, about 10%. We're going to see significant reductions in burglaries and larcenies. And so our overall crime will decrease, but our violent crime is going to increase slightly. So that leads us into the mandate from council to focus on 3 areas. In the area, of course, that the police department is most heavily involved in is focus area number 1, which is up here, which is implementing long and short-term strategies to reduce violent crime. Well, we've got a number of police-focused efforts that I'm going to go over, and then the last few slides are, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to the city manager, Mr. Larking, to cover those. But what we're proposing is creating a gang task force from various agencies, and that's not just law enforcement agencies. That's also schools, Commonwealth Attorney, any of the folks that are out here that have a say in what we're doing, the detention home, adult detention, the sheriff, the community services board, any of these folks that have ideas and information about the gang activity here in Danville and how we can deal with it in a concerted effort with all of our skills and abilities brought together. What we're also doing within the police department are this second bullet here. We've got a focused deterrence on gangs. We've actually created a gang task force within the police department, and we're concentrating on these things here to make sure that we can focus all of our effort on the gangs that are out there right now, and make life tough for them so that they don't have the opportunity to use a firearm and commit a murder out here. We've had great success just here in the last 2 weeks, and with some very, very good cooperation between our department and the Commonwealth Attorney on a number of search warrants. And so we're very hopeful that we've been able to change the dynamic a little bit here for the rest of the year. One thing that we feel that we do need is increased funding for our informant fund. The days when an informant is happy with $25 for information are long gone, and we need to increase that capability to be able to pay appropriately for important information. We also want to continue our successful burglary reduction program. We had 89 firearms stolen to date this year. 42 were from vehicles. The rest were, almost all were from homes and buildings. And what we've been able to do here is as short of time as 3 years ago, we were having over 500 burglaries a year, and we've brought that down below 300 so far. We may just crack 300 by the end of the year, but what we've done that with is using some crime analysis techniques in trying to predict where the burglaries would occur, and then going sitting officers in those areas and then looking for the people that are most likely to be committing these burglaries, and then trying to prevent that from happening. And it's one of our very, very successful programs, and we do want to be able to continue that. Additional community policing activities that we've discussed with the city manager and that he is in agreement with is to work with council to create a housing incentive program for any law enforcement officer who may want to live in some of the neighborhoods that we heavily police. And having that officer's presence in there and seeing that officer back and forth and creating those relationships with neighbors would be a positive thing. The other thing that we are going to try to accomplish is, as quick as we can, is a fixed-based presence in at least 2 at-risk areas. A fixed-based presence would be working out of an apartment, working out of a home, and trying to have some police activity within that neighborhood, and where the officers can be seen going in and out, and the officers can work out of as within that neighborhood. We're also going to work on increasing our visibility with footbeat, bicycle, and motorcycle in the at-risk neighborhoods to create, number one, opportunities to interact with citizens, but also to change how we patrol. When everyone sees the vehicle coming, sometimes it helps to have a different way to approach the criminals that are out here working in these neighborhoods. We want to increase our interactions with citizens. We do have permanent beats. We do our best. I can't say we have permanent beats, and we do our best to keep permanent officers in those beats. And but sometimes sickness and or vacation and training interrupts that, but we try to keep the same officer in the same beat as much as we can for obvious reasons, because they get to know everybody within that beat. They get to know who is doing what and what vehicles are supposed to be out, and what vehicles are normally running around at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we've had great success with that, and we've had permanent beats for decades. But what we're going to do is increase the interaction and mandate an increased interaction. And there's a way that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes how we're going to make that time available to the officers to be able to do that. The other thing that was a suggestion by city staff was that a development of safe zones for children and others to go to when they feel threatened, which can, of course, right now it's the schools, but that may be other places, churches and or fire departments or whatever, if someone does feel threatened, and be able to make those things available. The other thing that we want to continue to work on is the closer collaboration with the schools. We do work very closely with them right now with our school resource officer program. We've got, when we're fully staffed, we've got 5 school resource officers who are out in the middle and high schools, and they also have responsibility for the elementary schools, not on a full-time basis, but they swing by those schools. But we're working very closely already with the high schools because of the recent gang activity and the murders, because some of those gang members are school students. And we need to make sure that the violence out here in the street does not end up in the schools. And so we're sharing information, we're sharing intelligence with the school to make sure that they can stay on top of this also. What we're also going to work on is developing public awareness campaigns, gang awareness education. That is always ongoing, but we need to refocus that effort to make sure that parents know what to look for, and that parents also need to know where the resources are if they find that their child is in a gang or expressing interest in a gang or is leaning toward that kind of behavior. The other thing that we want to do is to promote responsible firearm ownership. We do have a program that we've had in place for a while, which is called Where's Your Gun? And we're going to revamp that. We're also going to put a counter on our website, and we hope that the media picks it up. And whenever a firearm is stolen, especially out of an unlocked vehicle, we don't want to shame the victim, but we certainly want everyone in town to know that we just had another firearm stolen that could have been prevented, and that very firearm may end up causing a murder in the next week. And hopefully by making everyone aware that if you own a firearm, there's a responsibility to do it responsibility, to make sure that it does not get into the hands of someone who is going to use it in a criminal manner. The other thing that we're going to do to help in this effort is expand our use of technology. We are very, very proud of our transparency efforts. That is one of the hallmarks of community policing. It's one of the hallmarks of the President's 21st Century initiative on policing, is to, when the community knows what you're doing and you're very open with what you are and where you are and how you're doing your job. We've been very, very transparent. In fact, we're very proud of that we've been very transparent with all of our operations and with our crime rates. And we also want to enhance that with our community crime map. Now, of course, that requires the internet connection, but there is a wealth of information when you go on our website under the crime mapping that's there. The other thing that we do want to do is to expand the use of the fixed video monitoring. We have video monitoring, of course, in the River District. That was part of the original plan. We cut our teeth, so to speak, on that, and learn the pros and cons and the pitfalls of that implementation. And we are going to recommend that we expand that to choke point intersections in the city, and then eventually into at-risk neighborhoods where we feel that a fixed monitoring would be very good. There's a lot of concern about that, a lot of civil libertarian concern, but Virginia has limited the length of time that you can keep a video from a public system like that to 7 days. So it would be used really after the fact if we have some type of crime or some type of incident where we have to go back and see who was there or who was near there or who was leaving the area. and then use the video to help in the investigation of those cases. That is turning into nationwide one of the best ways to deal with the crime problems is the video monitoring. The other thing that we're going to recommend is the fund acquisition of a gunshot detection system. This is a system of microphones that are installed in areas of the city that we feel are most prone to gunshots. Not only do we have gunshots that end up in murders, but we have a number of gunshots that are fired throughout the day and night, and it's increasing. Just in the number of calls that we get, when you track them over the last 10 years, it's been increasing. And a gunshot detection system by triangulation with microphones that are up can pinpoint instantly where the gunshot came from. They claim within 15 feet, and then you can immediately dispatch the officers there. It can also tell if someone is driving and shooting, because the gunshot will be tracked here and then here and then here. So we know that whoever is doing the shooting is moving in a certain direction, and we can do that. So we're really excited about that possibility. It is expensive, but it is in use in a number of cities. Richmond is one, and a number, Washington, D.C. is another. There are a lot of places that are going to this because of its ability to get an officer on the scene very quickly after a gunshot occurs, and then gather evidence and talk to people and learn exactly what happened. And then the other budget request that we're going to make, where we currently have a crime analyst, Jason Smythe, who's back here, right here. We hired him from up in New England. He came down, very, very talented and educated individual. We have him on a grant right now. And when that grant expires, we're going to ask council to continue funding that position. He's been very helpful in our gang investigations already, and he's only been on the job for just a very, very short time, several weeks. We're also going to eventually expand that. We are one of the few departments in the area that just got a crime analyst. There are several other departments around that have as many as 4. But it is one of the best ways to use and mine all of the data that has been collected over the last 10 to 20 years and be able to figure out the patterns that are out there and help in solving crime. We also feel that we have a need for a property and evidence technician position. In our property and evidence room, we have a very huge property and evidence room. We have 1 police officer assigned to that, and that's unheard of. That police officer is also required to go to court and testify on a number of cases. When we checked with just about every other police department in the state of Virginia, almost everyone has got 2 and 4 people managing their evidence and property room, and they never testify, if ever, in court. And our officer is overworked. And when you get overworked, what ends up is the possibility of making mistakes, and we don't want that in our evidence room. So we're going to ask for a second position down there. The other thing that we're going to go for and ask for is a council's approval and support for a false alarm reduction program. Out of all of the calls that we answer every year, we answer more false alarms than any other call. 911 hang-ups, disturbance calls, false alarms are the greatest number of incidents out of all the ones that we answer. We answer over 4,000 of those per year, and the vast majority of them are false. There are ways to deal with that. You can hire a employee, pay them a full-time employee, pay them a wage, and have them deal with all of the contact of people, registering of all the alarms, and billing people and setting fines by ordinance and everything like that. That's one way. The other way there are companies out here, and we are already entertaining bids from these folks to take a look at what it would cost. But there are private companies that handle all that for you. Council would set an ordinance, turn it over to the private company, and they handle the entire program and the fining and everything. And the final issue, as far as the police-focused efforts, would be additional patrol vehicles. We do have a need for that. We are barely keeping the fleet going, and with the extra efforts that we're engaging in right now, we are having problems in making sure that the officers have enough vehicles that are out there. So that is an overview of where we stand, where we got to where we are, and what some of our ideas are to move forward to deal with the specific problem of violent crime. So now I'll turn it over to Mr. Larking to finish up.
Thank you, Chief. So I'm going to cover the other efforts that the city is proposing. And the first is to form a youth services task force, which would be consisting of professionals from local youth serving agencies like Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, departments like Social Services, the Danville Public School System, and others who would work together to help provide wraparound services to youth and children before they get to the point where they're involved in criminal activity. So it will be focused on at-risk children, people that have been identified as having the possibility of getting into activity that is inappropriate, and try to get them the services they need so that they can turn it around before it goes too far. The next is to continue the city's effort on blight eradication. One of the things that studies have shown is a big cause of criminal activity is the blighted condition of neighborhoods. If we can continue our aggressive effort to deal with blight and help our neighborhoods, then we believe that will result in a reduction in crime. As part of that, we want to consider a graffiti program that other cities have done. It's a graffiti abatement program, which would be available to private property owners should they experience graffiti on their property and want help with the removal of that graffiti. We can have a program to help with that. It wouldn't be punitive to the property owner because it's not the property owner's fault when graffiti hits their property. So it would be a help to that, and it would really be focused on anything that's able to be seen from the public right away. The other thing that we want to focus in on with regard to blight eradication is possibly expanding our rental inspection district. We have some very successful rental inspection districts. When investor-owned property is in certain neighborhoods or prominent in certain neighborhoods, and we have a rental inspection program, then that enables us to make sure that people are living in at least a minimum standard of housing. And we believe that has resulted in some very nice neighborhoods and high rent areas. And if we can continue that, we'd like to continue that. And also, as you know, we've been working on the Community Development Corporation, establishing a nonprofit community development corporation. That we have a board together. We're working on hiring an executive director, and the city is supporting that effort, and we want to continue to support that effort so that we can build strong neighborhoods in the city. We also want to look at our Parks and Recreation programming for at-risk youth and children. Whenever we can provide some programming through Parks and Recreation to give children and youth an outlet for their energy. We all know children have high energy, and we want to focus that energy into positive behavior. So if we can develop Parks and Recreation program and library programs that help reach out to those folks, those kids, then perhaps they can, that time would be well spent. Also, we want to suggest that the city develop a community wealth building task force, which would focus on workforce development, trying to get people trained for the jobs that we have available here today. I often hear people talk about that they're having a hard time getting a job. We actually, if you talk to our economic development department, there are plenty of jobs within the city and near the city available to people who are qualified. And really a lot of times the qualification means that you are able to, if you have those soft skills, you're able to go in, go in on time, pass a drug test, and be willing to work is some of the minimum qualifications that are necessary to fill the jobs that are available right now today. And so we want to help the workforce be at least to that level and beyond so that we can recruit new and better industry as well. We'd like to suggest some initiatives to combat poverty. As everyone can probably agree, a lot of the reasons why we have crime and violent crime in the city is because we have a pretty high population of those in poverty. And if we can take a look at some multi-generational approaches to combating poverty, then that would be a long-term solution to some of our crime issues. And with that, those are the other efforts that we have suggested, and the chief and I are available to answer questions from City Council.
Mr. Clark, and I have already got Alonzo, Lee, Gary, and Larry, and we'll add to that. Starting with Alonzo.
First of all, Chief, let me say thank you to you and your team, your staff for putting this together. Ken, thank you so much. As Councilman Campbell stated a couple of weeks ago on City Council, this is not pretty at all. This is real disappointing, very sad. Out of this number of people who have been murdered, 13 are African Americans.
Yes.
Which is very sad. In your presentation, you mentioned, and I'll be quick because other council members have a question, generational cycle. Could you address in the African American community? You gave us a large presentation, very good presentation. In the African American community, what more needs to be done? And maybe you can specify which of those things really could help in the African American community.
I refer you back to slide number 7, which is the overview of the 2016 homicide. At the bottom one, what can help in the African American community are parenting, improvement of poverty, improvement of housing, improvement of education, and improvement of employment. Those things are critical to making sure that the youth in those communities don't fall off and are attracted to gang life.
You mentioned fixed base presence in at least 2 areas. You're at liberty to tell us, share the council, which 2 areas?
We don't know yet.
You don't know?
We've got some feelers out for where we can be, but there's a lot involved in trying to figure out where to go and what's available, and but we're going to work hard toward that.
And here's my last, this is my last question. I'll yield to other council members. One of the things that's on the last page is Parks and Recreation Program for at-risk children and youth. Several of our programs, Ken, have been closed down, and I'm hoping that the long-term plan is to bring something back to council in regards to, we hear it in the community all the time, our playgrounds that the young people used to go to, they no longer exist. So is there a plan to bring something to council about opening up the playgrounds as it was in the past?
Yes, we'll be bringing something back.
Ms. Smith.
Lee?
Yeah, I got a few comments and then a couple questions or suggestions or seeing about maybe some other things. I first of all want to say thank you and thank everybody with your staff that has spent time working on this. And for some of these things that were presented tonight, we have discussed off and on for a while, and I'm really glad to see some of them happen, particularly the moving more and doing more with community policing. And I think the housing incentive is a great thing. I'm glad to see that we're going to adopt that. The fixed base presence, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, in at least 2 at-risk areas, I think is great. And to go back to that and just make sure that I'm clear on it. We're talking about, and I know a year ago we were talking about a pop-up precinct or something, not an actual physical building, but essentially we're trying to have a presence without a substantial infrastructure investment in these areas.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that I'm all for that, absolutely. The police visibility, the foot patrols, I think are great. I'm glad to see us moving in that direction. There was two questions, I guess. I think the task force, by the way, another great thing that I'm glad that we're doing. If I had one comment or tweak to that, I would say that I personally would like to have at least one member of council involved with that. And if nothing else, for just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all working together. And also, if we can identify a dedicated community and or church leader out in the community who is involved in wanting to make a positive impact in this area. And the city manager and I talked about this right before the meeting, but I think the task force in and of itself is a fantastic thing. I think it's going to take the several different categories that the Commonwealth's attorney, the police chief, the city manager, somebody from WW Moore, all these different groups working together. But I also think if we can have someone who has credibility out in the community and who is wanting to make a difference, who is on board with what we're doing, what our vision is and what we're trying to do, and then they can help us go out and implement that out in the community. I would also like to see possibly them involved in that task force. But at the end of the day, I'm with the city manager on that. I think the task force has to be with one goal in mind, and that is to get things done. It's not to have big public meetings with the media and stuff. It is a working group, and I think it's fantastic we're doing that. I did have one question for the chief, and in terms of, we know that a lot of our officers, we're limited in terms of resources and things that we have. We just simply don't have an unlimited number of officers that we could have out all the time doing these things. Different communities call them different things, but they're often referred to as community service officers that assist with duties to free up the sworn officers, so that a lot of times, and I know this is preaching the choir thing, you know this, but for those who may not know, our officers are spending a lot of time doing, responding to fender benders, these non-emergency calls that take up a lot of time. Is it possible for us to look in, and if it's a budgetary thing that council needs to consider, then I'm certainly willing to do that, to train staff people who are not fully sworn officers to handle the non-emergency and situations that have little threat of violence to them, to handle that, to free up our officers to spend more time on drugs, on violent crime, on these things, so that they're not having to spend so much time doing the other types of situations.
That can certainly happen. A lot of large cities do that already, and then limit the number of crimes that a fully trained uniformed police officer responds to. Historically and traditionally, that doesn't happen in the smaller cities simply because everyone wants a police officer. And so it's a mindset, and it's got to be a decision process that we're going to go this way and not the other way. Understand when policing in America is local. It's locally controlled. It's everything about policing is local. There's 12,700 local and state police departments in America. We're not a national policing, and everyone takes pride in their police department, and they want their police officer to come to their crime. So it can happen, but it also takes a process of changing the public's mindset also, because a lot of times they want that police officer there.
If that's something that we could discuss doing, I would certainly like to at least give the opportunity to get feedback from the public. I think at least at this point in time, I think people would be certainly willing to that if it will free up officers to crack down on the violence that we're seeing, because when we're out in the public, that is the overriding thing that we're hearing about now. So maybe we can follow up with that and at least see if that's something the public is willing to support, because again, if that can help what you all do and give you all, free you all up more, I'll support that 100%. That's all I have right now. Again, I want to thank you all. I think there are a lot of good things in this presentation tonight, and I want to thank everybody, with the retreat, with council working through this, and then the follow-up that's been done. Thank you guys so much.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Council, we had a retreat, a lot of these ideas came up. Especially, even before the council meeting, the housing incentive program, I just had a question about that. Is that like free housing, free rent, or is that extra pay? I hesitate to call it combat pay, but certainly these policemen are going to be at increased risk, and they're going to have extra training. So what method is that, or what mode is that?
We haven't fully developed the way it would look, but the idea is to provide some sort of incentive for a police officer to choose to live in a targeted area. So you would develop a targeted area, you would provide some sort of incentive that would be enough to entice somebody to want to live there, and then recognize that it's purely voluntary for the officer to choose, but we would want to tailor a program that would pique the interest of an officer to choose to live in an area.
And I think it'll be successful, because I know several of us talked to some policemen one night, a group of policemen, most of them are younger policemen, may not have had families, but they said they would do something like this, they would, especially for extra pay, but, to help cut down crime rates in communities. Question of the chief, maybe as little as 5 years ago, when we asked the question, do we have gang activity, your answer was no, it was just sporadic, we didn't have much gang activity. What's changed in the last 5 years?
I don't remember saying that, but I do know that gang activity comes and goes, just like the murder rate. And we've always had gangs, at least for the last probably 12 to 13 years that I know of. But as long as I've been here with
Yeah,
the
they
state
weren't a
gang.
major factor. A few years ago, that's what you said.
Right.
Gang activity was sporadic, it wasn't a major factor. Now it seems to be a major
Yes.
factor.
And I think one of the reasons is those four things that I listed there on slide number slide number 6. It's why we went from a record low to a record high, or the four things right down there at the bottom. The offenders are getting younger. The gang members are getting younger. There's nothing more scary for a police officer than a 13-year-old with a firearm. There's no sense of responsibility. I mean, you'd much rather go after a hardened criminal who's 35 years old with a firearm than with a juvenile, because they have no concept of what that firearm can do and the consequences of it. So that's what's happening, and social media is what's driving a lot of this most recent influence. There are a lot of, and we see it on the social media, we hear about it. There's a lot of bravado and insults that we put up there. That drives anger, that drives a lot of the things that are fueling these murders. And then the big thing is the access to firearms. We've even had older gang members tell us that they are scared of the younger ones because they're out of control. That's what our problem is.
Gunshot detection system. Now, I just want to clarify something that I have heard, and it may be false. If there's gunshots fired or somebody calls gunshot in my neighborhood, police won't come to the door unless they're asked to come to the door, or explain that. And there's a good reason for it, I think.
Right. Number one, we get calls of gunshots all the time, but the sound travels all over. And so what sounds like in your backyard may be half a mile away. So, we'll go. Most people don't want the officer knocking on their door. When they call, they just want to report, I heard gunshots, and try to give an approximate location, and then we'll go in that area. The gunshot detection system, because it's so precise, allows us to get very, very close, within 15 feet of where the gunshot occurred. And then if it's in someone's backyard, we'll knock on that door. We don't even need a citizen to call because we'll know where it came from.
So I don't have to ask you to come to my door to get you to come, or do I have to ask you? That's what I heard, that, if somebody's house was shot at, they had to call and ask them to, the police didn't come to the door, and they had to call and say, are you gonna come? And they said, no, we don't do that unless specifically asked. And knock
Well,
on the door.
there's different types of calls. The first call is I heard gunshots. And then the assumption is that the house was not hit, that no one has been injured, and there's gunshots in the Westover area of Denver. Okay, wow, that's hard to pinpoint. So we'll send an officer out to that general area to try to determine if we hear any more, see anything out of that's suspicious. Now, if somebody calls and says, somebody shot at my house and hit my house, but I don't want to talk to anybody, we're going to knock on the door anyway. And if we end up, if somebody says, you know, somebody has shot at my house, we're going to go up and talk to the door, talk to the owner too. But, I mean, that's a crime, all of them are crimes, but that's a crime that we can have a specific victim with and can talk with the victim and take a report.
Well, I'm sure the police are hesitant to come without an invitation because it might be an ambush.
Right, and we've changed our tactics because of the 2 attempts that we've had recently on police officers where they were shot at. So we have changed our tactics, but we still answer the call.
Any more questions? We have quite a few that have
One more.
want to.
Stakeholders, I just want to comment on that.
Fine.
Your stakeholders, you know, you listed them here for the gang task force and in the youth services and the schools. Some of the biggest stakeholders are the students, the youth. Are you going to get them involved at the schools? I mean, they're the ones that are getting hurt. They're the ones getting shot. Not just professionals, but students or young people. They're the biggest stakeholders of all.
Well, the exact makeup of these groups isn't finalized, and the goal was to create a working group of people who are actually dealing with the populations we're trying to reach, and so that group would be hands-on, would be able to make decisions right away. It would be more focused on getting the job done, but as a resource, we certainly want to bring in others to get their input and their advice and their thoughts on anything that we're trying to accomplish. So that, and that should have been more clear in this, but there'll be other, not only youth, but we could also reach out to other members of the community. There's also state resources that will be available that we could reach out to that would help us in any of the effort that we're trying to accomplish.
Suggest you put some students on these task forces.
Lee, you want to piggyback on something Gary said earlier?
Yeah, I'll do that quick, and then once others have a chance, there are some other things that I did want to come around. I'm trying to break it up so we can, but on the, with the rent and all that, rent-free, I'm sorry, are we gonna be reaching out to places who have done this? I know Indianapolis is one that's implemented that to make these, you know, they did rent-free in a high-crime area, and HUD has what they call, I don't know if we apply, you know, if we're able to get it or not, but they have what they call the Officer Next Door program, which gives grant funding to help pay for some of these things. Are we gonna be going through these avenues and trying to get?
We certainly we don't want to have to reinvent any wheels. So if something has worked well somewhere else, we're going to look at that. And that's usually what we try to do pretty much any time we look at a new program. So certainly we'll do that in this case.
And we'll reach out to you to see if we're eligible for this
Yes.
Officer Next Door program.
Yeah, I remember when I think it was brought up during the retreat.
Retreat.
And I researched, I think Earl researched it as well, and that's definitely on our task to see whether or not it would work well for us.
Awesome. I do have others sometime, but I can wait till.
Alonzo, you want to piggyback on something Gary said?
Yeah, Dr. Miller, Ken, you may want to chime in on this. The mayor and I have had many meetings with the city manager. You're absolutely right in regards to the youth, about revamping the youth council. And it should be a report coming to us very soon where possibly we can tie some of this into the new youth council.
Certainly, the youth council would have a role and a voice in anything that we're trying to do. We obviously want the youth council to be involved in all the things that are important to the city government. And this is being one of the number one focus area, we're going to involve the youth council.
Chief, and to piggyback off Dr. Miller, when our citizens are calling about shots being fired, wouldn't it be a good idea now for the officers to go to the door because of the number of murders and shootings we have in our community, just through this phase that we're going through right now?
if someone says that someone has shot right outside of their door, or in the street in front of their door, or their home, or has shot at their home, we're gonna go. That's our standard protocol. If someone simply calls in and says, I heard gunshots, then, okay, you know, I would hope that the dispatcher is gonna ask a few more questions, follow-up questions. Are you hurt? Are you injured? Did it strike your house? No, no, no. Okay, thank you very much. We will send an officer out there in the general area. We don't go by that house because we've already gotten that information through the dispatcher.
And I understand, I understand about the ambush because we know what happened in one community with the police, but I'm just hoping that there's something that minds, just as the great minds put this together, I'm hoping that there's something that we can do to kind of coordinate that. Thank you.
Larry, oh, yo, follow
Yeah,
up.
that's fine. So if that's your policy, I think you need to get it filtered on down, because we had a citizen complaint when shots were fired at my house, and we waited and nobody came, and then we were told by the dispatcher, well, unless you specifically ask us, they're not gonna come knock on the door. So that may be the policy up here, but you need to get the policy down there.
All right, and, yeah, there's entirely possible that things break down or miscommunications, and we try to correct that whenever that occurs.
Larry.
Yes, first of all, Chief, and to the city manager, thank you for the report here tonight. It's very important, and like it's already been stated, I'm very thankful for the energy we move forward. Some things that have already been stated tonight, I just want to show that I am for. Number one is more recreation for the youth, extra funding for recreation and for policing and staffing. I got a feeling that we do not have enough staffing, and we understand the problem of recruitment, but I am for any extra funds that we need to put out for that. I think it's very important. The other issue is, with all that has happened in our community, the extra fear, the response that council has gotten from all sources from the community, do you feel that police staff need extra training? You stated the word intervention. Are you looking at stop and frisk more often? I'm concerned about the Safe and Sound coalition that we had. There was some complication. It brought down, but yet it brought some things up and was moving to an area that could cause Baltimore, some other things, whatever. Could you first address that point, and where do you see that? How are you dealing with the concept, even with the community asking for more?
I think as far as training goes, I'm confident that the level of training that the officers have and how to apply the rules of law out here on the street when they're dealing with suspects or potential suspects. I think they have a good handle on that. We also have body-worn cameras, we have in-car cameras, and all of those interactions are recorded so that we can go back and review them. We do that with supervisors to improve on how the officers are handling these kind of situations. One of the things that has been used in other jurisdictions has been a stop and frisk. We don't intend on doing that. What we most often do is stop and talk. And if the talking then leads us to take further action or to suspect something, then we may do it. But a stop and talk is the bedrock of how we operate. And I think that, coupled with the body-worn camera, so when a complaint from the community is made, we can deal with the complaint and then have them look at the video and work all of these things out.
Okay, that sounds good. Other point, and I'm not sure, because I was reading so much as I was going, I think that for all the information and statistics that you're given tonight, you didn't say anything more about how many shootings we had. I think that's an important statistic that should be out there for us. You have a shooting, you have shooting victims. I'm more concerned about that point because you have many guns that are shot, but we have more people that have been shot from the shootings. I think that statistic should be out there more, at least I would want that.
I don't have the exact number, but it is over 100 as far as the number of shootings. Now that includes people that were not wounded, that were shot at. So if there's a drive-by shooting into a house and 5 people in there, that's 5 aggravated assaults, although nobody was wounded by that bullet. What we do have also, as you see on the regular report, is that there are a number of people that are shot on a regular basis, just about every week. And I agree, that's something that probably needs to be put out there along with the responsible gun ownership. Some of those woundings are self-inflicted too, because the person with the gun doesn't know how to handle the gun and ends up shooting themselves.
Excuse me, Chief, 10 more minutes and we're gonna have to break for the regular council meeting. And we do have 3 other councilmen that would wish to respond or ask questions. So let me say that we can keep it as brief as possible.
One more thing that, thank you for everything you've done. I'm glad to see you talking about youth engagements with the police department. And I'm asking that mothers who have experienced loss, sons in our community, we're asking them to step up to the plate and speak out moments against violence or killings in our community. I think that's a very strong point that we have overlooked, and I would love to see this in some kind of way to move forward. We need our mothers to step up. Thank you, Chief.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, Kim wanted to comment.
I apologize. I just want to say that everything that we're talking about doing here would be in addition to any community grassroots effort out there. We are certainly going to support any community efforts to deal with issues like that and be there if they call upon us to be there. I just want to make that point clear. Although it wasn't stated in any of our presentations, we will be continuing to do that.
Sure.
Chief, special thanks to you and your men and women for all the work that you do. I know all of council do, I certainly do, support what you do, and thank you for your service. You're very transparent in giving information. When you report crime statistics in our city, do you report the same way as every city in Virginia, in the country, county? Is your reporting more transparent than others? Do everybody report the same way you do?
I can say we're more transparent than a lot of other departments, and that's because we chose to be, and we make a very, very strong effort to do that. We also make a very, very strong effort to report all of our crime. I'll tell you right up front, there are some places that do not. I've told council before, I told the city manager, we can go to internet reporting on a lot of our crimes, and our crime rate will drop. Because when you tell someone who calls 911 and says, I want to report my stolen lawn chair from the front porch, and we tell them to go to the internet to report it, yeah.
I raise the question because those numbers make Danville look bad.
They do.
But if others reported like you did, they probably would too.
Yes.
If not worse.
But that's
But that's no excuse.
That's not everyone.
Right, but that's no excuse. Secondly, the offenders that have been arrested and are committing these crimes, are many of these repeat offenders? If so, any idea what percentage of these people are repeating these crimes? Been caught, released, and committing crime, more crime?
Many of these juvenile gang members who are involved in these violent crimes have repeatedly been through the juvenile justice system.
They have been in
Yes.
and back out.
Yes.
Okay, and lastly, Mr. Mayor, any local, state, federal laws need to be changed to enhance what you're doing, your department's doing? Do you have legal handicaps that cause these problems to go on? They're being addressed, but to go on to be repeated and oftentimes by the same people. Are there legal handicaps? And what can we do to assist you?
I appreciate the offer, but I think at the moment we've got just about all of the necessary laws we need.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, yeah, thank you again, and thank your staff for all you're doing. Ken, thank you guys as well. I know you've really been meeting and working hard to get these ideas pressed out. Just real briefly, can you tell us how many officers work the beats per shift? How many are on the street right now?
We have 10 beats, and we have 17 officers assigned to each platoon to cover those 10 beats. One of those, of course, is in the department daylight. There's usually 2 of them in the department. And then we have to have sick time and vacation and training and things like that. So our minimum staffing outside is 10. That's on the patrol side, the uniform patrol. We also have community policing section, and right now, because of vacancies, we're lucky to fill about 6 to 7 at any one time out there. So if everything's working perfectly, we can have 23, 24 officers. What is more likely, we have about 17 or 18 at any one time.
And how many?
In the evening, now during the day, there's more because there's more staff people in the department.
How much staff is in the department on a daily basis that doesn't leave the building?
I'm going to say at least 14.
And
And they're in and out. I mean, crime scene is there, but they come and they go. The crime prevention officer's there. He comes and he goes.
and just briefly, street crimes unit,
Yes,
how many of those are?
we have 2 shifts and it's full staff.
Everybody's working.
10 per shift, so 20 total. Plus
All right.
supervisor.
And what is our shortfall? How many officers are we short right now?
At the moment, I believe we're 4 short. We hope to fill those, a good number of those by, may not be totally accurate on that, but we just need a couple more, and the numbers always change. But the next academy starts in January, and we hope to hire more the 1st of January and get them in. We may not be able to fill them all.
And total number of officers would be 131?
131 with council's approval for us to go up to 135.
Now, I'm just one speaking here, but I'd like to see us go to 150. And I think you wouldn't have a problem at all getting funding from us to do that. Is that something you'd be receptive of? I mean, would you accept that, or would you
If we are fully,
consider it?
if we are fully staffed, I think we have enough police officers to do the job. The idea of using public service officers that are not full officers, like Councilman Bowler said, may be a good use of those extra positions and extra staff, clerical staff.
Thank you.
Okay, I keep asking about the time. I know we got less than 5 minutes here, but we got a couple of follow-up questions, and Larry and then Gary on follow-up on Buckner's.
Chief, real quick, of the 131, how many are minorities?
How many what?
Minority police officers.
Do we just hire? I'm thinking we have 20 out of 131 authorized.
So you got 15%.
So, yeah, it's usually around 13 to 15% minority. But what we're very proud of is that about 20% of our supervisors are minority.
Gary, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just real quick. So, to implement this program, make it work, if you get those 4 other officers, you have enough officers to make it work without extra officers.
I think at this time, if we're fully staffed, we can do
We can
our
do
job.
Okay, and Lee, before we go to Leo, let me just say that on our work session, immediately following, we will continue this discussion. So if you still have other items you wish to ask questions or comments to make, there will be a time to do that after our regular council meeting. Lee?
Yeah, 2 points real quick. I want to first go back to the community service officers. Chief, you do think that they could be beneficial in terms of freeing up the officers to do other things? It's just that making the case to the public would be the big reservation. If that's the case, if I wanted to get the feedback on if it could be beneficial. If it's beneficial and the only holdup might be trying to make the case and get public support. I think we can do a lot to help with getting the public support. I'll certainly go to bat for it day and night, and I think the public will get behind it. So, as Councilman Buckner mentioned about maybe increasing it, if we do an increase using these community service officers to handle the smaller crimes so that we have our fully sworn officers out dealing with these more pressing issues we're dealing with right now, I support that fully. The second thing would be, I've been looking a lot at, and I think some of us have been, Operation Ceasefire, which is covered in this book, and I think we even had a speaker who dealt with it, and it's been used in places all over the country. A lot of what we talked about tonight is a part of that larger thing. I wrote pages and pages of notes. I'm not going to go through them all. The focused deterrence, which was in here, something I wrote down. A lot of good things that we talked about tonight. One of the other things, though, that, and I think it goes back to something Larry brought up and mentioned a minute ago, was one of the things they did was they had what they call group forums or call-ins. Essentially, the first thing that they would do is the police would identify gang members on parole or probation, and they would compel them to attend a meeting and essentially deliver an ultimatum to them that the shootings were going to stop, and if not, the consequences would be swift, certain, severe, and that they were going to punish not only the individual involved in that particular shooting, but that the entire group, the gang, was going to be, that they were going to be punished, that they were going to start cracking down on it. But the big part of it wasn't just the police talking to them. They brought in clergy, they brought in ex-gang members, they brought in the victims and the family members. They would be there on hand to deliver the moral component of the message that what you're doing is wrong. We know you can do better, and if you don't, we're siding with the police. That we are backing the police to do what they need to do to make our city safe. And in a lot of these cases, hearing it from a relative, hearing it from a neighbor, hearing it from someone that they respected in the community, face to face with them, standing with the police, resonating with them, is that something that we can look into doing and trying to bring some of these groups together and being very upfront and honest with these people? Is that a part of this larger?
That's also
And let me
every
request
police
a
department's
brief answer.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yep, I mean, like I said, that's every police department's dream, is to be able to have that kind of community support.
Lonzo,
Chief,
you got a-
quickly, Chief, I just read it a few minutes ago in regards to what we're doing with Daniel Public Schools. Give us a little brief information on how the partnership is working with the police department and Daniel Public Schools.
We are almost in daily contact with Dr. Cochran and the school security officers about any information we have. They share information with us. They engage in, they are a lot easier to, it's a lot easier for them to do searches. So we give them information, they can do searches, and so they really try, together, we try to make sure that the school environment is a safe one.
Is there any more funding that you need from City Council for more SROs? Is there anything that, and you can answer this coming back to the next.
Okay.
And let me just say, the mayor didn't get to make any comments or ask any questions. But I will make a 20-second comment. And I think police officers that are present, including the chief, possibly will agree. But police do not cause the crime rate to increase. Police do not cause the crime rate to decrease. We've got to address programs that will. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.